Also like to extend invitation to some of our coming on-site events. Next month we'll be in Christchurch on 27th of August for a day of networking, knowledge sharing, and best practice discussion with industry peers. So it'll be a great opportunity to connect, share experiences, and learn from others facing similar challenges. We'll also be participating in NZ SUG in September. So if you are an SAP user attending the event, come and join us in Auckland. We'll be part of a roundtable discussion where we'll be sharing insights and exploring some key topics with the community. The following month in October, for our Maximo users, will be also be speaking at NZ Mug in Rotorua. So we'd love to see you there as well. And looking further ahead in November, we'll be heading to Sydney, Australia for another customer networking event. So this time, with a unique twist, a day of discussion, connections, and networking while cruising Sydney Harbor. Exciting, isn't it? So we'd like to see you at one of these events. So please reach out if you'd like more details or would like to join us and visit our events page. Okay, hello everyone. I know I'm finally putting a face and voice on tons of emails I've been sending you with. So I am Esmeralda Matiga, Business Development Lead for EDM at Matrix. We have current customers here who are in attendance, but for most of you who are new to us and what we're doing, let me introduce to you our company. We are Matrix Applied Computing with over 45 years of experience supporting engineering-driven organizations. So we specialize in finite element analysis and computational fluid dynamics, product lifecycle management, and engineering asset data management and infrastructure solution. Our boss wouldn't want to hear this, but it is true that we are one-stop shop in terms of engineering technology platforms, as we understand how engineers actually work, and we deliver end-to-end solutions. So here are some of Matrix EDM customers who are either Meridian or Red Eye users. We work with organizations across the utilities and energy and engineering sectors, including network operators and major asset owners. Our customers choose Matrix for practical proven engineering management solutions and the industry experience to make them work. We understand the challenges of managing information across complex assets and projects. So before we start, some housekeeping. So for this webinar, drop in your questions in the chat panel anytime, and I'll be managing the questions or comments throughout the webinar with our technical guys here. So feel free to throw in your questions as we go along. And if you already can, I'll be posting the Slido link in the chat so you may join the poll. And what is your biggest audit headache? And you may book in a demo or discovery session after this one. So hopefully my email is still there. So you can book a one-on-one demo with us and with our team actually. And as mentioned earlier, we have series of events throughout the year. So you are free to visit our Matrix events page at matrix.co.nz. Okay, so the main man, our partners in terms of product management at Accruent, he drives product marketing initiatives that connect technology solutions with customer needs. Working closely with product, sales, and marketing teams, he develops go-to marketing strategies and messaging that highlight business value, support customer adoption, and accelerate growth for Accruent's engineering information management solutions. So without further ado, let me introduce to you the main man for this webinar, the Manager of Product Management at Accruent, Cisco, Sara.
Thank you, Esmeralda, and hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar. As Esmeralda said, I am Manager of Product Management at Accruent. So essentially, myself and my team, we look after customers in various industries, working with them to understand how our solutions can better support them in managing their critical and infrastructure and important assets. Now, today, of course, we've come together to discuss stress-free audits. Maybe that's a bit of an overpromise. I don't know if I can promise that they'll be stress-free, but the goal of today is to certainly be able to walk away with audits being something that's a lot easier to approach, removing some of that difficulty around getting that data together by looking at how the work that we're doing day to day can help build that story, help build that that history once it's needed down the track. Because we find that speaking with customers, the challenge really isn't that the work isn't being done properly. After all, it's often that we can see that drawings are approved, that contractors or internal teams have access to the right information, changes are done in a controlled manner. The real difficulty lies in trying to prove that, say, 6 months, 12 months, or maybe even several years later. And that's the gap that I want to focus on in today's session. So just before we get started, just a little bit about Accruent. As I mentioned, we look after, so Accruent is a large company that sort of builds software for the what we call the built environment. Global company, look after 5,000 customers, 100 countries. We're essentially two divisions. The division I'm part of looks after asset solutions, working with organizations like yourselves to better support the work you're doing in building and managing your assets. We have two solutions that my team looks after. They're both engineering document management solutions, Meridian and Redeye. Some of you on the call may be familiar with those solutions. They're essentially both trying to do the same thing, and in some places they do it together through our integration, but they have slightly different approaches in how they're built and how they're trying to help customers. So Redeye is a cloud-native solution designed specifically for the operations and maintenance part of the life cycle. It's highly intuitive, somewhat simple in its approach, but complex in what it can do, and built with an unlimited user model. So it's designed for all the work to take place in Redeye, and you invite people as needed in and out, capturing all that information in that one shared repository. And I'll dive into a demo of that product later on in this call. Meridian's a slightly different approach. It's mainly on premises, but it's complex. It supports highly complex industries, particularly industries that have a lot of governance or regulatory requirements. So think of like your nuclear or pharmaceutical industries. They get a lot of benefit out of a product like Meridian. And they do that because it's highly customizable, so we can meet strong regulatory requirements or complex internal workflows that SaaS solutions typically are just a little bit harder to customize in that area. So both products have their audiences. Like I said, there is an integration, so there is the best of both worlds, and the solutions are then integrated into the broader Accruent suite inside what we call the enterprise asset management solution. So we have maintenance connection, which is where work is essentially planned. So your preventative and reactive maintenance work is planned there, and then it pulls through the relevant documents from Redeye or Meridian, depending on what's needed. And then that work, once it's ready to be scheduled out into the field, can be pushed out through our field solution, which gives technicians in the field everything they need to get their job done effectively, but also has some intelligence behind it to make sure that the right technician at the right time is being sent, so that we're helping customers optimize the work they're doing. Outside of that, we're of course integrating with all the important solutions like ArcGIS, SAP, and other critical organizational systems that ensure that the important information in these systems is being distributed throughout the organization. And likewise, we're pulling in relevant context into our solutions as well. So just as a quick overview of what we're going to look at today, the session will break down into sort of these 6 areas. We'll look at common information management challenges that make audit responses typically difficult or harder than they should be. I'm going to share 5 practical questions that are good to frame when trying to assess your audit readiness. So going through these, and we'll talk through these in a bit of detail, we can see what position we're in to respond to an audit. After that, we'll look at why, even when good practices are in place, workarounds and bypasses exist. From there, I'll dive into the Redeye product and show you how it works and how it supports those 5 areas and audit responses. And then lastly, we'll discuss some practical takeaways and finish with some Q&A. So let's start with the common challenges where people get stuck. So when people think of audits, they often assume the challenge is finding documents, but the reality is most organizations can find something. your SharePoints or many content systems make it somewhat easy to discover what needs to be discovered. The real difficulty lies in finding the right document and ensuring that it's the approved version, that it was the one that was used when work was carried out, that it has its history with it, that it's complete in everything that it needs to be about that document. So that's obviously quite difficult in many organizations, particularly those that are in, say, joint ventures or partnerships. We typically see information being spread across multiple systems. There's shared drives, inboxes. We've had customers that tell us that due to the limitations of their system and the distances between their office and where work is being done, they ended up storing information in different vans, which obviously is not ideal, but it all becomes a nightmare when we're trying to reconstruct an audit response. Document statuses can also get blurred under these situations because it becomes difficult to prove what's the latest version. There could be spreadsheets in different systems that are trying to be the source of truth, or maybe we're using file name conventions to try to prove that. But then we have conflicting information, different files claiming to be the final version, different information that we don't know where to trust or what's correct. So there's also critical context that's missing, approvals and markups. These typically can occur in different places, depending on how systems are structured. That information could be lost if it happens in a manual way or in an uncontrolled manner. So all in all, we can see that these different problems that we're facing here, they're all symptoms of that same underlying challenge, that we don't have a complete picture. And when an audit request comes in, we're asking our staff to become detectives and try to track down the story that we're trying to present to the auditor, having to speak to different people or dive into different systems to build that, which is obviously not ideal. So the way that we can assess whether we're at risk of that challenging situation is by asking these 5 questions. Now, these aren't intended to be the be-all and end-all in terms of audit readiness or to replace any internal frameworks you might have. It's just 5 practical ways that we like to think of to make sure that customers are in a good space. And that's things as simple as, can we find the approved document? So do we trust that our systems can surface the right information and that our employees can trust, or that our teams can trust that that's the one that they can use? Under the same idea, can we identify which revision governed the work? So when we look back, can we be sure which revision was the one that was applied into the field at times? So do we have history associated with our documents? Can we show access, who reviewed it, who approved it, who was able to view it? All these important things are important, especially depending on the nature of an audit, but we may need to prove that certain people had access to documents under different regulations. And then finally, can we collect that whole history in a way that's relatively easy? Or are we asking, like I said, our teams to become detectives and spend days, if not weeks, collating information? So diving into those, the first, the word here that I really want to lean on is approved. It's not just a matter of finding documents, but finding the approved version. Because like I said before, most organizations can surface a document with the right document number or title, but it's confirming that it's the correct version that really matters. And as we spoke about in the previous slides, when we have multiple systems in play, multiple repositories or uncontrolled processes, that becomes very difficult. And it also adds complexity, because if those different systems are owned by different teams, then they typically have their own ways of working, especially if they're separate companies. So then we're asking the person who's conducting the audit to become experts in different file name conventions or different file structures, which adds inefficiency, but also creates a chance that the story that's presented isn't the complete story. We can add added complexity to that when we have different systems in place as well, which may be pointing, so your maintenance solution, for example, or your GIS may be pointing to a document, but that document that it points to might not be the controlled version. So a lot of uncertainty that we want to close by having a good source of truth, essentially. And that's what good looks like here. A strong approach is one trusted place that your organization, your connected teams, your contractors can all access the information they need to do their job. And then we can trust that because at a point in time they can access the right information, we can trust that during an audit that information was correct and that we were able to prove that our teams had access to the right information. So I touched a little bit on revision, but ensuring that the right revision governed the work is important because, like I said, we're trying to get a snapshot in time here. So when we have those messy situations with multiple copies, duplications, file names that are unclear, all in play, trying to find out which revision at the right time can be difficult, especially depending on the way people are, how diligent people are with filing, but superseded versions can easily linger in shared drives, old emails, or we know that sometimes people like to save things on local drives, and it can be difficult to try to control that behavior. And obviously, supersede those versions is impossible. So all this creates a lot of uncertainty, which is the opposite of what we want. An audit wants it wants exact knowledge. It wants to be able to understand the revisions that were applied, the story that occurred at the time. So we fix this by ensuring that we have a controlled document process in place that eliminates guesswork. So we want to see when documents were drafted, when they were reviewed, when they were approved. We want to make sure that documents are automatically superseded, that we've got that full history of what happened, and that teams aren't relying on file names or understanding complex filing structures, or worse, somebody's memory, because people obviously leave, to be able to prove the revision that governed the work. So all in all, we want a system that's going to give us confidence, is what I'm saying in that audit response. The third question is around decisions and access. So once we've established the correct document and the revision, the next question is, how was that decision made? And the proof drawing, of course, is only part of the evidence. An auditor may also want to see who reviewed it, who approved it, what was changed, what decisions were made. So here, comments, markups, revision history are vitally important, if not more important than the document itself that we're trying to surface. When we have disparate information or employee turnover, that story is quite easily lost. So it's important that we have systems in place that are capturing this information either through regular manual check-ins or ideally through a more controlled automated process. And we can do this through controlled workflows that keep history connected, comments, approvals, dates, roles, all this important information tied to the document revision itself, so that we're not having to do a lot of work to reconstruct that history once the audit request comes through. There's also the question around who had access. So of course, engineering information moves through various teams. There's internal teams that will touch it. There's external teams, consultants, suppliers, multiple parties that are involved. So we know sharing will happen, but we want to be able to prove the way that it happened was in a controlled way, with the right people having access to what they should have access to, and that controls were in place to ensure that only certain people were able to make changes, and those changes happened in an approved way with internal workflows. Obviously, if we're utilizing uncontrolled methods like email attachments or paper documents or Teams chats, all that control is immediately lost. It becomes very difficult to prove that in an audit situation. So good document control here is not about stopping collaboration or slowing things down, but it's about making sure that we're keeping everything visible. So we should be able to see when documents are shared, who it was shared to, how it was shared, who received it, when they viewed it. That viewing part is especially important as well. We want to make sure that we can prove that certain people had access to the document and they viewed it at the right time. So it's about proving that evidence the evidence of what was available to the right people at the right time, and that that information was delivered in a controlled way. So tying all this together, the last question we want to understand is, great, we've got all the information, we've got the controls in place, but can we prove it in an easy way? Or, like I said, is this going to take a lot of work to piece it together? So this is about ensuring that we have a system in place that doesn't require people to be exporting records manually or comparing document revisions, having to retrieve correspondence or call people up, email people, what have you, to build that picture. We should be able to quickly ascertain the history of a document in the system and produce reports that speak to the workflows that it's gone through, who touched it, when it was approved, and the state that it lived in the period that we're trying to audit for the auditor. So I'll jump into a demonstration in a minute to show you how that happens in a system like Red Eye. But before I do that, I just want to talk through how even when we have the right systems in place, the right processes in place, workarounds will still prevail. There's a few reasons why we see this happening. I think in most organizations, I think it's true to understand that this is not happening because people inherently don't care about compliance or because they're lazy or anything like that. It's more often because the processes in place are getting in the way of the work that needs to get done. So a big one for us that we see is trying to enforce required fields. I think this is something that people can relate to no matter what their role is. If we're trying to get work done and we have a form in front of us that has 10 mandatory fields that are complex, we're either going to find a different way to get the job done, or we're going to put in junk data if we don't have time to fill that out correctly. So when time is a pressure, those fields become friction that we don't want. So we want to be really mindful about what we're requesting from people during vital stages of the process. This could be in checkings or document upload or different workflows. There's obviously information that it's important for the organization to capture, but we should minimize what is mandatory. We can still have metadata that's essential to surface in these areas, but it should be done in a way that's not restricted. So that's a big one that we speak to our customers about. Another one's about looking at our workflows and making sure that they're streamlined, that we have good notifications or processes in place that can identify when things are getting stuck. Again, I think this is something we can all relate to when we're not getting responses through the correct channels. We'll typically find other channels to get that done in the office. This is as easy as getting up from your desk and tapping that person on the shoulder who isn't responding and getting them to respond, which is great because we can continue with our work, but that has all happened in an uncontrolled manner that we can't prove later on. And we know that with how busy people are these days, the likelihood of anyone going back to document what happened outside of that controlled process is probably very little. So we want to be mindful of the steps that are in place and remove any friction so that work stays inside controlled processes and doesn't move into email, Teams, or things of that nature. Another area is that around access. We want to be thinking about who needs access to the document. Systems like Red Eye are designed to be self-service. They move away from this idea of trying to gatekeep information. Instead, we've got strong access control so that people are only seeing what they should be seeing and for the periods that they should be seeing it. But we want to open that up so that everyone can work inside the system in a controlled way, essentially making it easier to work in there rather than having to bypass and get people to email them things or download things into areas that we just won't have visibility on what happened. And the last is that around disconnected systems. This one's a bit harder to solve. We have customers that, because of partnership arrangements, have different systems to their partners. And here we will typically see bridging activity occurring to try to make those two worlds work together. Ideally, and we've seen this with some customers, mandating a solution will help bypass this, because if we can bring everyone into the same solution, then we can ensure that information is is captured and easily accessible for audits. But if that's not possible, then it's just important to be maintaining this information in a way that's easy to retrieve later on. Okay, so quickly, I want to talk about how a system like Accruent EDMS helps those areas that were flagged on the call today. So first is the ability to find information in a meaningful way. I'm going to show you this in a minute as part of the demonstration, but we want to be using things that are meaningful to the user. We shouldn't expect our users to be experts in our systems. They should be experts in their jobs. So the system should be flexible and should surface information based on meaningful information. That could be meaningful to the asset that they're working on, or metadata, or other contextual information is what I'm saying, rather than understanding complex filing structures. They need to be able to trust the information, so we need to make sure that the system is able to surface the correct revision. Documents are live, they're constantly changing. Even when approved versions exist, revisions are still usually in place. We want to make sure that those revisions aren't being surfaced to users until that they're approved. So the latest approved version should always be what users can access. We need controls around who can access information, how long they can access it for. That's all vital, of course, and we need to be able to report on who's been working with documents, the workflows that things have gone through, and how information has flowed through a project or piece of work that we're trying to prove to the auditor. So with that, I do want to jump into a demonstration. I'll walk us through the Redeye environment and just show how it supports that But this essentially is Redeye. Redeye is a little bit different to other document management systems, and that's why I want to show you this versus diving into Meridian. It's designed to be a flat structure. So unlike other systems that have filing structures that require people to understand the way they operate in different organizations, Redeye is flat with all information living in what we call a bucket. Information is surfaced and hierarchy is established through metadata rather than physical location. So the beauty of that is a few different things. Having a flat structure means information can be easily found through search. So Redeye has pretty advanced search functionality. It has the ability to utilize this form structure that makes things a bit easy. If not, it supports like Boolean search or advanced search queries in the field here. And we can use things such as location data, content that's in the document itself through OCR, file names, things like that. So we can surface content pretty quickly through search. Some users still prefer a folder structure. So for those users, we do have a solution that we call visualize metadata. This essentially is using the metadata that exists and presenting it in a file-like structure. So this is something that can be customized at a bucket level or for your organization, depending on how things want to be. And hierarchy here can be established as deep as it wants. But this is essentially just utilizing the search function to build a complex search without you having to know those steps. So very handy for people who prefer that, but not necessarily required because, like I said, information is quick to surface. Something else that's a bit different from Redeye before I dive into the audit side, I do want to quickly cover this. Redeye utilizes something that we call an artifact. This is what makes auditing easy in Redeye, because unlike other systems where you upload a document and you might upload a different revision of that document and have to supersede it or end up with duplication depending on different projects, Redeye treats the document, its revisions, its comments, its history. It treats all that inside what we call the artifact, which is the global record of that document. So duplication is automatically avoided, and rich history is maintained tied to the drawing quite easily. And we can see by diving in here that this is a native CAD file. We can see the render of the file. If somebody wanted to mark it up, that'd be possible on screen here in the web application or or on the app. This is the demo environment, so the metadata isn't very rich, but it does flag what's missing at the top, making it easy for data health to be maintained. And then what's important for us here is this history of the artifact itself or of the document. Here we can see the different revisions that the document's gone through, who's touched it, whether things were approved or not approved. And this goes right back to the start of the document itself. If I jump into this one, actually, we can also do some cool things, such as comparing, if we want to compare between two different revisions for any reason, we can do that in a visual way that shows us side-by-side changes of what happened between these two revisions. So here we have version 7.3 versus version 7.5. And another handy tool that I like for understanding the history is the visual tool that we have that will depict exactly what's happened over a timeline. So here we can understand how different parts of the document journey have occurred, when revisions happened, when things were approved, things of that nature. So all this is great from understanding things at a specific document level, not necessarily robust enough for what we need for an audit. And that's where reporting comes in to help us with that second part. So here we have the activity over time report. This is a report that can be structured for different date ranges. We can zoom in on different workflow steps or artifact types. Here I've just got it zoomed in on the artifact that we were just looking, and we can see the history of that artifact, when it was uploaded, all the changes that have occurred, when it was approved. So here it makes it very easy for us to capture a log of the story that occurred for the audit, including the dates that occurred, the documents that we used, the different steps that went through. So this is capturing, I would say, probably 90% of what we needed for those questions before. We know, going back to the 5 questions, we know that information can be found easily in the system. We know that the right version is used because Redeye always surfaces, or a system like Redeye will surface the approved version to the user. So we know that that's correct. We can trust that. And then using reports like this, we can report around how changes were made, who had access to it. The only thing that I would say is missing from this report is who viewed the document, because this is tied to workflows, but we can close that last gap through the view activity report, which shows us exactly when this document was opened, who it was opened by, and the time. So all in all, that gives us that complete picture that we need for the audit itself. So the last bit that I want to leave you all with is the first is so there's two practical ideas that I want to leave you with. The first is that it's important. A good place to start is to choose a recent engineering change and just see how easy it is to recover from it. So this way we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can just look at something and see if we're in a position to respond to it. Should that be what's chosen for an audit? So can we answer those questions? Can we find the governing documents for it? Can we identify the correct revisions? Can we trace the review and approval process and the story around who had access, including external parties? And can we link all that back to the work that was done? And as we work through this exercise, I encourage you to pay attention to where things slow down, to where delays are happening. Maybe you're having to consult different people to try to get an understanding of all that, where the friction currently lies internally for you, and where maybe a solution like Redeye could help streamline that moving forward. The second takeaway is to start small. Not suggesting that you have to redesign every workflow or clean up years of historical data, but making small changes can improve friction. So that could be standardizing one workflow, or starting to improve metadata in a subset of areas, or starting to bring contractors into controlled processes one at a time, so that we're not looking to create perfect today, but we're starting to build towards richer, more thorough records So then when the time comes for an audit, we're not scrambling to pull it all together, but in a better place to respond to those. And with that, I'll open up to Q&A.
You answered the first one that was sent to me because the first question that was sent to me prior to this webinar is many organizations have decades of legacy documents. Where should they start if they want to improve their information management? So I think that answered that question from the previous slide that you presented. Maybe you can answer this one.
I will
Yep.
just expand on legacy documents is a real interesting one.
Yeah.
And we see this typically with customers when we first start to speak to them, that there's always this process of trying to gather a lot of legacy documents. Sometimes they're in formats that are manual or are very hard to read. And I would just encourage people to go through the process of trying to digitize those. We have partners that are well versed in digitizing that information, even ones that are hard to read. And advancements in AI and computer vision are going a long way there as well. So definitely try to get those documents digitized as soon as possible and bringing them into your control processes. I know that customers who have done this have found that work that they had planned to be conducting in a coming period was actually already done. They just hadn't realized they had a document that proved that. So that's one thing I'll expand on.
That's correct. Okay, so this one is relatable actually because the wonder sort of our poll is this one. So from the email list was sent to me, many organizations need to share information with contractors, consultants, or external partners. How can they maintain security and control while still enabling collaboration?
Yeah, that's a really important one because we definitely don't want to stop collaboration. We want to just ensure that we have an environment that supports it. Again, I will lean on Redeye and the way Redeye is designed with its unlimited user model. The good thing about that is that it's not penalizing organizations. Typically, the more people you add to a system, the more licenses and the more costs we incur. But with Redeye, it's the same whether you have one person or whether you have 100,000 people in the system. So here we want to make sure that systems have low barriers to entry for adding people and then tight controls so that people are accessing the right information that they should be accessing to for the right amount of time. So yeah, having a system like that, like Redeye, we can bring in external partners as needed. That could be for a project. We can put them into groups so that they're seeing the right documents. And then when's needed, they can leave the system. And then that whole history of the way they've conducted stays for us in our records.
Yeah, right. Okay, before I throw in this next question, is there any question from the group, from the participants? Everyone seems so quiet. Okay, I'll just throw this one in because this one is actually commonly asked when we talk to client. How do Red Eye or Meridian support traceability, revision control, and audit trails?
Yeah, that's some of what I showed there, but it's essentially, it comes down to just tying things back to the document. So in Redeye, it's the artifact, making sure that everything's staying tied to the work that's been, so automatically, just to step backwards a bit, it's ensuring that the systems have a way to automatically log what's happening around this. And the more that you stay inside a system and keep things inside that controlled environment, the more the system can see. So Redeye, all the work is happening in Redeye, with the exception you might have to check out to do some design work and then check it back in. But aside from that, it's happening in the system. So the system is able to log that information and then tie it to the document itself, as I showed in that history tab. So keeping things close to the document is just an important way of overcoming that.
Yep. Yep. All right. Is there any other questions from the group? Maybe you could just ask them. If they want to ask question, we'll ask them. Okay, this one, I'm also curious about this one. What are some of the biggest mistakes when you see organizations making when preparing for engineering audits?
I think one of the biggest mistakes is limiting, so touching back on some of the things I spoke about before where things fall apart. It's not having a good document process in place or a good system in place that is that universal source of truth, and then not having everyone in that system. So coming back to your question, how that makes it difficult for auditors is we don't have that complete story to be told, and we're having to do a lot of work. The other thing I'd say is not doing regular audits. So a lot of our customers have a good audit habit in place. Redeye has templates that pre-populate what we know about your documents, and then has fields that you can complete yourself. So having a good culture of auditing things regularly means that when an audit happens, we're in a good position because we understand what's been happening with our projects and groups. So yeah, I would say just having that culture of one, having information stored in a centralized place, and two, being ready to respond to audits by having pre-audits done in advance so that we're in a good place.
Yeah, because I think most of the organizations start from somewhere. Like all of their documents are somewhere. Like they have a hard drive or their desktop or documents and all. So yeah, it's very important to have that one single of truth. Yeah,
Absolutely.
in audit. Yeah. Okay, since there's no question, do we have last words, Cisco, before we wrap up?
Just mainly, I guess I just wanted to thank everyone for today's session. I mean, we spoke at the start of the call about the Matrix team being available. I highly encourage you to speak to the team about how you're preparing for your audit readiness and how systems like Meridian and Redeye can support you in those. I mean, of course, we're all here to try to support organizations like yours in the work that you're doing and try to simplify that. So yeah, I encourage everyone to reach out to the team.
All right. So thank you for spending your time with us and being part of this webinar. And we hope you found this session useful and that hopefully we managed to keep you awake. So we'll be sending the recording to everyone. So don't worry if you miss anything or want to revisit your favorite slide. So if today's session sparked some ideas or you'd like to see how this could work in your own organization. So just reply to my email or book a personalized demo or discovery session with us, assuming my email is not blocked yet. So, and finally, check out our website for upcoming webinars like this, customer events, and other opportunities to learn, connect, and talk all things engineering information management and other engineering technology platforms that we have. So thanks again for joining us and have a fantastic day. And we hope to see you at another Matrix event soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Cisco.
Thank you.